This is a big deal. We were speaking about it earlier on the show and the potential of a breakthrough with Israel-Hamas. But it seems as though Israel are not happy with the proposals that are on the table at this point in time. Let me just ask you this. Is a lasting ceasefire actually achievable at this point?
I think that's a critical question. And as you say, we are at a critical point now where that may be more likely than it has ever been in the last few months, I think. Clearly, the two sides have maximalist demands, right? Mm-hmm. Israel does not want a lasting ceasefire until it has secured hostages, but also has sort of met its vow to defeat Hamas, which according to Prime Minister Netanyahu, hasn't happened yet. Hamas has an interest in agreeing a ceasefire because it will leave another day to fight, right? So it is a critical moment where the pressures have gathered to the boiling point, and it may become possible to actually end up with a deal.
Yeah, you know, one of the paradoxes I see is the whole goal from Israel's perspective of going ahead with the invasion, the war in Gaza, was to neutralize Hamas. That's what they wanted to do. And yet here we are 7 months later. You have more than 30,000 casualties on the Palestinian side. The Israeli hostages are still being held by Hamas. There are truce talks taking place between Israel, mediated by U.S., Egypt, and Qatar, but Hamas is still the other side. So if their goal was to neutralize or defeat Hamas, that hasn't happened. And that's why it's going to be difficult for them to get this over the line, because if their goal was to neutralize them, in a way, by going ahead with this truce deal, they're also legitimizing them as a political party.
Classic catch-22 situation, right? You can't. Israel doesn't see a future of Gaza with Hamas in it, but it has to work with Hamas to end up with a resolution, and that has made the situation extremely complicated. And then, of course, you have the set of constraints that each of these sides have internally, domestically. Prime Minister Netanyahu has a lot of pressure internally, both from protesters who are demanding that he goes forward to release the hostages, but also from his political allies who are intent on a Rafah operation.
If this truce deal falls apart, how likely is it, you think, for Israel to go ahead with the offensive into Rafah?
I think to some extent they already have started an operation in Rafah. They have called it limited, and I think there is a chance that they will strike in Rafah sufficiently and occupy positions in Rafah. The idea of sufficiently to be able to allow Netanyahu to call that a success, together with the release of hostages, and that would create the opening to get a ceasefire. The alternative is that you'll have a more prolonged operation in Rafah, but still, I think, with a lot more focus on the humanitarian situation and more surgical than sort of full-scale invasion.
I just wonder what that all means for Israel's standing within the international community, because many, including their closest ally, U.S., President Biden, has warned Netanyahu not to go ahead for the offensive from a humanitarian perspective. You hear it from the UN as well. If they do decide to go forward with the attack on Rafah, what does that do to Israel's standing within the international community and some of these deep relationships that they have with their Western allies?
I mean, certainly Israel's been more and more isolated in the last few months, at the very least, throughout the conflict. Hamas is actually encouraging that, or sort of appreciating that, because it weakens Israel's position, right, in negotiations, and has come to this point. I think some of the stronger allies will still be there, and we have to understand as well that for Israel, as it is for Hamas, for Israel this is an existential threat, and particularly for Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is an existential threat, and that's what makes it the tensions.
A final quick one. How close are you watching what's happening in southern Lebanon, the northern border with Israel, the daily crossfire exchange between Israel and Hezbollah?
Yeah, those have died down a bit. I think both the Houthis in the Red Sea and the Hezbollah attacks will continue. If we see more operations in Rafah, we will see an intensification of these attacks, but probably we expect them to be within the parameters that we've seen until now. So tit for tat, no further escalation.
All right, yeah, well, at least no further escalation there for the time being.